Hi, my name is Anthony Yang, and in this speech I'll be refuting Alex's claim that subsidized college education does not that subsidized college education hurts students more than it helps because it increases tuition. His claims were that Cal State's used to be his claims were that Cal State's used to be free until they became more subsidized. His second claim was that subsidies have caused schools to raise tuition and passing on the expenses towards the students. And his third claim was that subsidies have caused schools to become far more available to the general public, adding to the problem. Now, to his first, in my response to the first claim that Cal State used to be free until it became more and more subsidized, is that Cal States technically were not completely free. Now, well, it is acknowledged that according to the Daily Cal, a school newspaper by UC Berkeley, there was a policy by the California government called the California Master Plan, and provided tuition-free college education to California residents. Now, I have to emphasize California residents. Non-California residents had to pay at least $1,000 per term for their education, and that $1,000 helps prop up the notion that the California college education was free for the college residents, for California residents. Also, for California residents, registration fees were around $3 million a year at the time, in the 1960s. Now, if you were to convert that to today's dollars, that's actually around $2,000 a year. Now, that's actually one quarter's worth of tuition for Cal Poly Pomona in general. Now, the topic of free education for Cal State is technically a misnomer. Saying that the Cal States were free ignores the fact that other fees have to be taken. Other fees were taken into account to pay for the so-called free education, like paying for the use of laboratories and the food that is provided by the school. Now, his second claim that the subsidies have caused schools to raise tuition, it's not the claim that colleges have raised tuition is not consistent overall. However, in some cases where these schools have raised tuition, it may not necessarily be in part due to subsidies. It is one cause of the increase in tuition is because of the exorbitant cost of labor for administrators. Now, according to the University Business article written by Stephanie Botelho, pay and benefits can be expensive due to the collective bargaining of the public unions by the universities. According to a spokesperson from one of the unions, Scott Schneider, and Associate General Counsel for the Tulane University in New Orleans, the cost of unionization can actually be quite costly for an institution when they're trying to hire new administrators, especially when they're trying to factor in their possible lack of experience. However, in other cases, subsidies, tuition hasn't necessarily gone up for certain schools. According to the graph by the Cal State Budget Office, the net total increase of tuition fees, which is also adjusted for inflation, has remained stagnant since 2010. And according to the look at the graph, it has even gone down since 2010. My response to his third claim that subsidies have caused schools to become more available to students, which adds to the problem, is my response to that is that it hasn't become more available for students overall, because according to the Center of Public Education, lower income students are a lot less likely to get to a university today than 20 years ago. This is due in part of their lack of ability for SAT classes and tutoring sessions. And in the case of California, acceptance rates have actually dropped as competition for a spot into UC has been skyrocketing. Because according to the Atlantic and reports from the UC admissions office, 6 out of 9 schools in the UC system have freshman applicants whose average GPA is at least 4.0, with average SAT scores going above 2,000. So schools may not be as available when there are other students who have like higher merits that are pushing these people out. Now, in conclusion, subsidies may not be the sole reason as to why tuition has been rising, as there are other factors involved in it. Thank you.
Okay, you started off pretty well organized. I thought your secondary claims, when you were responding to the particular claims, got a little confusing, especially on the third point. On the first point, you're challenging basic information about the history of the Cal State financing system, and you've got reasonable presses on this. The notation that there really were costs that involved, and if we put them in current dollars, they would be pretty substantial costs. I think that's okay, except what does that mean? How does that affect the argument that the advocate's presenting? You're responding to the secondary claim without explaining how the response to the secondary claim undermines the main proposition. And so I think you're missing the point on that. You get caught up in this idea about what was the real history, and instead of talking about whether or not subsidizing the students has driven the prices up. I think that just gets it wastes a lot of time. On the second point, where you're talking about that there are other causes, I think that that's a reasonable challenge to make for the increasing costs. You've got one basically that you identify the cost of administration, but there's no quantification about how significant that is. The idea that there are going to be unionization and that causes increased costs, I don't think that's just administration unless you're including the faculty as administration, because the unionization of the faculty probably had a lot to do with those increased costs also. And I think that you would need to demonstrate that a little bit more, especially in the CSU system, since that's where we're talking about these particular points. On the third point, access becomes an issue, and you're basically suggesting that access is being limited because there's more demand for the schools, particularly among well-educated or high-performing high school students. That's a reasonable challenge. It's still a counterclaim on the argument, but I do think that you're sometimes missing the point here, which is did the advocate show that subsidies are in some way driving up the costs? I think that you raised some questions and you challenged some causality issues. I'm just not sure that there's any way to measure it. I'm not sure that the advocate measured it either, so that's a little bit of an issue also. All right.